Okay, hello, this is our last material lesson. And today we'll do all of the rest of the materials that have any interest. So, these are a bunch of materials that we just had left. And we'll just pass them. So we'll just take this one. We'll look at 4 types of wood. Look at plastic, um, brick, and another type of brick, and some tiling. And let's see how multi-texture works. And the multi-texture, we have what's in the bonus and the form, and we also have blaster made. So let's look at our materials. Let's just render at it. And look at what it's made of, as we've always done. So let's look at, we have 3 materials. The base material, second is for dirt, and the other has these green areas. It imitates kind of some leakage effect on the material. So it has so you can get these greens to be more strong, more deliberate by adding an extra texture. So on your own projects, on your own walls, you'll be doing this by yourself. So you might not be even using dirt, you'll be using this separate map with leaks instead. So I'll get this a bit dirty now. So the reflex will work on depending on what gets on them. And they will enrich the material when you have a lot of separate illumination systems pointing. So we get this material here. Let's just look what it's made from. The base material here is a diffuse map. The diffuse map, since it's gray, I use it on the reflex. I mix it with this map here to add up some extra stuff. It's the same map as on the reflect glossy. These values were made, were attained by rendering, just by iterationally. So I got this map on bump. So I wanted to outline our material. So I've got 3 maps in usage overall. First of all, I used 2 maps. One reflect glossy, one for the diffuse. I had the spec there. So this map I have here because I've used it to mix it, just to outline the material and all. This is all necessary to get extra value on our bump. So it's just to say here's the same material as the base but it's more glossy. And I did this map here to be a bit darker. So here, make it kind of darker and use bump to outline the textures. Okay, so just an ordinary map here. And just mix it with the green. So I just clicked RGB here. And spread this out here. You got that green kind of tone for our texture. So here I have the map that is used for the bump, the mask cart. It's in the mirror regime because here you see some additional tiling. Let's make it 2x2. And as you see, you get tiling, and that's why I did mirror. You get less tiling this way. And as a result, I got this kind of material. So let's see the next kind of concrete. So because there's a huge amount of material, we won't be paying special attention to any of them. But the basic scheme is very similar to how we made the metal materials. Okay, so we got different types of blend everywhere and bump, and it's pretty much the same as in the metal lesson. So now we're going to get some kind of concrete panels. It's pretty glance material, and the glance concrete materials are good because they get a lot of reflections and they look very rich when you have many objects in your scene and when it has a good lighting system. So let's have it rendered. Let's look at how the bump works. As you see, it's not insanely strong. So you get the textures, but the reflections are definitely rich. So from these materials, some good speculars are made, are attained, but I've just turned off the speculars here. So we don't see the speculars. Turned off the speculars, I mean. So here by the reflexes, you can see where the map is. It doesn't reflect any black. You can see kind of guess what additional maps are used when you look at this material. You're looking at the reflection here, just here. Here's the concrete material to look at. So here you can see how great it looks. So if you use some additional objects, the material will look absolutely fantastic. For those who will have this kind of stuff, this kind of wall in their project, try using this material to use it. It might be used for some sort of like, I guess, a ceiling. So it's very important to see texture. So the form of the texture is definitely very important. You need to keep in mind the form of the box's size. So let's look at what it's made from. In your diffuse, you have two maps. One is a bit darker and the other is a bit lighter. And they are mixed with the map that I use in reflection. If I used one map, these parts here would be lighter, And since the reflections are light, I had that these parts and the stitches were differently illuminated, as the stitches had more light and it was creating certain difficulties. And so after this they became darker and more visible. On the reflect I had this map that I've used in the previous material. So I reflect, and I had the same map on the specular. So you have to find these maps somewhere, but you should have your own base of textures because they are certainly important when you mix them. So let's look at what we have at glass. We have this map on the glossy. As you see, they aren't very common, and the maps are quite different from those that I've used in the other tab. So, okay. And I did the same base as I did in the first. So, I played around with the textures, made a different texture on the glossy, and made the material a little bit more complex. So I increased these parameters here, changed them up a bit. And so this seems to be it for this material, but just in the former material, I added these materials here. I added those materials to the bump, but I didn't change any of the parameters, so I didn't get kind of any standing out effects. So this is the main bump that was meant to define the stitches and the holes. And the other two maps were additional. So this seems all for this material. So let's look at another one. So it's just a darker material that is meant to. Okay. So here, it's used. The second material is just used for adding a bit more glossiness and the specs. And the map here that I've used. So I just mix them up again, and I get this material here. So using the same principle and using different maps, you can get quite an amount of different variations. I personally found this to be really nice, so I believe we can move on from here. So if you use another map that is meant to use some kind of leakages, it might be something you'll find out too. So you can also use that for this kind of stuff, but you might find out by yourself. So let's go to wood. It's the very simplest wood there is. So it's a medium strength glance wood, and if it often used, you can make it quite quickly. You can just use these parameters for your default wood, and you'll get a fairly nice wooden effect. So let's just get to this. It's nothing really hard. It's just a map on diffuse, a bit of perpendicular, a bit of fall off, and 30 here, and a bit of bump. And so it's pretty simple, nothing tricky here. It's not a high bump material. Just look at it here. So it kind of outlines our texture, which is located on diffuse, and we see how bump works on the reflexes. So just let's go back and look at it. So the material could be a bit more glossy if you want to. And reflection gloss here. Okay. Just choose some material here. So let's look at it. This material of the Wengi wood is a bit more complicated because it uses a bit of blend. Let's look at what it's made of. So as you see, this material here has some kind of deeper kind of cuts. So it has kind of inmate stuff. So this effect could be stronger. Has some imitation here, and it has some glossy material, some outline materials, but I do believe it looks quite interesting. Let's look at the reflection. Okay, these ones are not reflective, and the others are reflective. UV lighting. Let's just take a look at the bump here. So just look at this. Let's look at what we used on the map, and it's used on the bump. This one here, the one we've used. So let's use what we have on. Let's see. The second material is just glossy. Okay, and it's used for the mixing. I've inverted this map. So and these other two are additional maps, so I'd better invert it and add some contrast. So as you see, you can make this effect a bit more deliberate. These ones here, these kind of in cuts, as I'd say, can be made a bit more deep. So we do use bump on both of the material, on the additional and on the main material. So let's look at the next material. It's going to be even more complex. So as you see, this material is more appropriate for classical kind of stuff, which has a bit of dirt, classical furniture. So I've made, what I did is I had outline edges made. So, but you might have to edit this according to your personal taste. So you can make a kind of a bit more texturized materials, making some so as you see, it's not this material looks slightly edged. It looks a bit washed up, and this has some imitation of the beetle that the woody beetle that harms wood. I'm not sure what its name is. As you see here, some kind of scratches, which could also be made different according to your personal tastes, which gives us some effects. So, of course, you could make the base material a bit more complex, but personally, I found this to be very nice, so I didn't actually do much. So what you do is you just throw a map with a dirt, but it could be done. I didn't really do it. You just get all these stuff you'll be doing by yourself on your homework. So here I have this typical material that looks like this. Here you have diffuse right here, 2x2 diffuse, and it's a no stitch texture. So you have a parallel kind of a type of a dimming fall off, and you got your Fresnel turned on. It's very necessary to have the Fresnel here. So let's look at the mix here. So all the maps I have in the scene on the mask or on the reflection are all mixed into one, and you get this material as a result. So further on, we have this material that has this effect there. I mix it with this map. It gives it's clearly visible on the ingrowns. We've got this kind of a blackened material here that is used on dirt. So I've got the dirt doubled to have an extra effect. So this map, these two maps, they are here, and in every other material. So all of the materials outline bump. So you have to you just need you need a bump to highlight these effects, like the bug effects. I'll just call it the bug, the wood eating bug. Okay. So here. So since by now you've done a couple of dozen materials, you probably have to know all this, but I probably don't have to go into much detail. So let's just render, see how it looks like. So the material looks much like the first, but you use a lot of different materials. So you use it on the dirt, so you have zero here. So the map that was used here for these sketches, these stains, I've turned it fully turned off, and the dirt is the only thing working here. And these bug holes here are also visible due to this. So here somewhere I have a darker map, which is the dirt. But generally it just has this white material, which you will probably find to be interesting in your work. It's just to make something interesting in your scene. So you probably don't have to find out much. Don't have to say anything that there's anything innovative here, but you just new maps mostly, some additional bump features. So as you see here, the black part of um, the black part, you can see that the dirt materials are completely unreflective, but the main material does reflect. So as the main material here, you can see that we're using some reflex, and just logically, the white is the color, and since it doesn't, since it's a bit washed up, it doesn't reflect quite as much, being all that used. It's not that glossy. So let's use the, okay, so this here we have 19, these parameters set. You might have to want to edit this, however. I put it as 07077. This, as you see, this is very important for the wood, and the mix does mix them all up. So the dark material here, one by one, just one difference, that this one here is a bit, I just wanted to make it a bit grayer, and I used the same material as I did formerly. So, okay, now let's get to the plastic. It's a very simple plastic, but it's a bit acidic green for me, a bit, generally a bit brighter. So, we've made see-through plastic before, and this won't be see-through. You can pretty much set the same stuff as for the reflections. Just don't use any kind of see-through here. So they don't really differ from the wood. You just have to catch the necessary reflections. They are usually more glossy, and just do some bump work. Okay, so I use Fresnel here, and the bump map, extreme noise, and this kind of map here, and this is the map that I've shown how to make it with no stitches. I just found this texture in the internet for about 10 minutes and made it into a stitchless map, and now I use it. So you just kind of get a kind of uneven rub effect. So the only thing is the diffuse map and the bump are slightly different, and the necessary reflections. That's about it. Okay, that's pretty much the only difference these two that exist. So as you see, there's a bit of noise here, a bit of noise in the bump, and here too. But when you see the highlights, so the plastic is often used in the Fresnel, and you can make the plastic easily black, and you can also set the noise according to your personal taste. And it's all dependent on the type of material you need. The material is quite simple. Just check out what material you really need. It's the plaster material. It's going to be kind of Venice kind of plaster. So while it's rendered, I just do this. I'll explain what it's made from. So I have a map on diffuse. I'll just show it. It's mixed with the tone that you use in the map itself. 50 here. Okay, it was following parameter. So I thought it's a very bright map, so I chose 50, 50, because it was just a bit too bright. Fall off here, reflect glossy, and a bit of a bump. Let's just look at the preview what it does, and look what we have in the slots. So this kind of plaster is highly reflective. Sometimes in interiors, it is highlighted by yellow lights, and if you get any kind of blue, say, reflection, it does look absolutely fascinating. So it's highly reflective, as you see. Okay, so let's look here. So view image here. So this is a stitchless map for the plaster. So by its factor, it does look like plaster, and the black and white here, and this texture here, which is used for making our reflex a bit more complicated. They mixed by 50 to 50, and here, it's 50, 50 from the map. And since I wanted the map to be to just kind of stand out, but I wanted to have just normal refractions, so the value of the map is 20, and you have the Fresnel reflections. Okay. It's a pretty high value, so you do use Fresnel. So use 1. So it's not quite glance, but you do have a bit of glossiness in it. It's very smooth material, so that's why I mixed it. It's yes, very smooth. So this seems to be all of the maps that I'm using for this particular material in the glossy and in the bump. So let's look at the next. So it's a bit more glossy. It really depends on the textures you have been using. So let's just look. So I'm getting this kind of glossy feel to it. So if this is what our previous material looked like, the reflections, and you got the map, how it got influenced by the map too, and here you have a slightly different effect. So this is very necessary for plaster. It really outlines and helps outline to the reflexes. So you can make some kind of different kind of water lines and stuff, but this is all dependent on the maps you choose to use. And this is pretty much the same material as the first, but some of place from place, the glossiness kind of changes. Glossiness, a bit more reflections here, however, but the map is generally a bit darker, so a bit more glossy here, and bump here. Get this kind of option of get this kind of option here. So you just let's try looking at our next material. So let's look at our maze. We have a cart for diffuse, a bump map, and a map there. Reflect map. You should. So I don't suggest putting more bump than 10. So roll lightning. Okay. So roll lightning. So it's pretty simple. So it has slightly. So this is why it's minus, because these things here, the bump map is this map where the stitches are white. So that's why I chose to have a negative value for bump. That was the diffuse map. So if you don't have a map for diffuse, but you have one for bump, you can use this kind of option. It's a bit more glance, a bit more diffuse. So I had a very nice diffuse, however. I'm sorry, no bump, but only diffuse, I meant. So I just used that one diffuse map. This is what I did. This is what I got from it. So I got the same stitches. The stitches don't reflect. The maze does. The tile does. So let's see how I've achieved this. So I've got this map here. I looked at how much it has. It looked as 15 by 15, but since the ball is already mapped, I did it 4 by 4 to make it look better. So it looked 60 by 60. I got it to be 60 by 60, and so Fresnel here, a bit of glance, and that's better besides bump. And I have the tiles on the bump. Okay, yes, I have this map on the bump. So I got this here, three on here. I just put it a bit smaller. I just got it just by. So I just put this one to 1 to enhance how thick the stitch is. I got all of these settings experimentally. So this is 4 by 4. Okay, 4 by 4 tiles. Since it's 3 by 3 here, I get 20 by tile. Since I have 3 on 3 in the counts, I get 20 by 20 in the counting. In the tile, okay, up there. 3 by 3 on the tiling. So the second material is just a white stitch. So I just mix them together, and I get this kind of material as a result. There are several, of course, options for this kind of material. So they aren't always as direct. So that's why I chose my parameters to be set in the way I did, because it's not always a nice number. It's not always 15 by 15. You can get 36 by 36. So let's try out some different materials. You will get this kind of scene here. to render. So just try out different renders. So you're gonna test it. You're gonna get the scene. So let's try making brick. If you're using it brick in some of your project, this is something you might really enjoy. Because this is a whole object, I didn't use V-Ray displacement mode. I just used the ordinary displace built into a material. Okay. So this, I just get what kind of map makes it. So we're getting this kind of brick here. So we're choosing displace. Just look at how strong the displace extrudes our bricks, and looks at the reflexes. We can make the texture to be a bit more accurate, but this whole thing really depends on the texture. So you want to have these parts to be outlined. You want it to be very nice and smooth, so you can get this kind of brick done. Let's see what it's made of. So an ordinary diffuse map here, a reflex map, an ordinary bump map, but I turned it off because the bump was unnecessary, and the same map on the displays. Of course, you can always spend your time fixing and enhancing the map, but I personally found this acceptable, so I didn't really choose that I did not to do anything. This model is very nice because you can turn it around like I'm turning around. You can do pretty much anything. For testing your material, just to change it in a fashion to get a new perspective of the light. This place here, as you see, because of the high displace, this is how the brick looks because of this display thing. So this is how the brick looks on a surface. What? So here you can, judging by this, you can make a decision if you need your reflection or not. So yeah, and that's the rest is up to you. And this is I personally believe that this is quite usable. If you don't really have any kind of map, you can use the ordinary method. Just ordinary tiles, just tiles there, and use running bond instead of the custom tiles here. And here you have mix. You gotta mix together. And you use your reflex here. And since the display isn't equal, I used a bit of reflex. These reflexes here don't really look all that nice. But because they are all very straight, you don't have to be afraid of anything. Will be all nice. So you have a map on displays here. Seems alright. And then you have a map on the here. One ordinary map on diffuse. This one here, it has this kind of a leakage here, kind of a mask. It has some black and white. has some graffiti. So just a bit of a map, some color correction. Just made black and white here. So just like, let's take a look. So that's what you get when you're making your BIC with a standard method with no maps. This is nice when you need a very smooth brick. And you can always make it a bit more complex. You can always set a map there. You can map a map for the stitches, a map for the bricks. So it's absolutely a smooth, very nice kind of brick, and you can just see how it works. Look at how the displace works. It's all very nice. There are some reflexes. You don't have anything extra you don't need, so I guess it has an interesting look to it. And you got your leaks here. So the kind of the white stuff you have from the bricks that appears during bricks or some water spills. So you can usually make this kind of brick without any additional maps. Of course, you will have to get separate maps for the graffiti. And the last material, the multi-texture material. And there's a multi-texture lesson that we have in the bonuses. You can find it. So there I showed that you upload a bunch of you can upload a bunch of multi-textures, and you just have the list here, and you can always download that for free on our website, and that will help you a lot to save time. So you can just look here. So use the multi-texture in the folder, and you'll have a you can get that kind of knowledge how this was made from the multi-texture lesson, and then go back to the model. So this map scatters different textures automatically on the geometry made by the floor geometry, and you have the filtering here. So you have the blur some. You can have the rotate. This is a very new function for that just appeared in the recent versions 3ds, and it does significantly save your time. It does make stuff whole lot simpler. You can upload vertical stuff here. So we have these parameters here. We can randomize by object or material ID. So you can texture, take it by the object, and you can take it by BIC on tile. Here you can choose how much the spread is, so how much variations there are, and some variations. Random, so you can choose a gamma here. Here you can set a color parameter and some here and the distribution too. This seems to be about all by multi-texture, so you can just separate the stuff. You can say you have don't have much textures, but okay, you just change these parameters to get the right effect. So generally, it's just the same material as everyone else, and this seems to be about all. And these materials aren't radically different from the wood material. So let's just check out how this looks. You can make the tile in the same fashion. Absolutely any material, actually. I do believe this is overly reflective. Let's just put 32 subdivs here, and 2 over here, 5. Let's make it a bit glossy, so we don't get the fracture. Let's get the fractal reflections going. Okay, make a bit more here. Just check out the fracture of wood. Okay, and that's it. Just so we can see that we will encounter all of the uploaded textures. So as you see, all of them are different, and you can use that in your projects. So you can also use tile and use the generator for that, and upload a bunch of different tiles and make your own kind of tiling, and make it with combining that with the reflex and all the standard settings that you have been previously using. And the floor generator works on on every part. So say you use this map here, you use, say, checker, the material will be used on absolutely every checker on the checker kind of map. Say you're using map, so it's going to use on every part of it, say. So this is about all of it. And after that, we're going to have some lightning lessons, and this is all for now. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the forum. Best, hope to see you again.